It's Sunday after the fights. Oh Lord, I had a bit of a bit of a congestion problem there. Sunday after the fights, UFC 289 is in the books. Amanda Nunes has retired from the sport, at least for now. My rule when it comes to MMA retirements is they're never final. We've seen guys come back from years on the shelf to fight again. We haven't seen a girl come back from years on the shelf quite yet, but it wouldn't surprise me. I do believe that she is actually retired. She's been talking about this for quite some time. Her battles with desire to fight, the challenges provided by the division as well has been something she's highlighted, and her desire to move into the next phase of her life, which is, the family life. Her and Nina Nunes have a kid. I believe Nina spoke of wanting to have more kids. I can't remember if I heard Nunes talk about more kids, but presumably there are plans for some more kids in the works. And this does feel final. It feels like a decision she feels good about. She goes out on a win, unlike a lot of people who go out on a loss and then rethink it. She had plans. She had a retirement speech to a certain degree ready. And she goes out as the greatest female fighter of all time in terms of achievements, prestige, star power. Not star power, but star power as it relates to just MMA specifically. We can debate whether she's a better fighter than Valentina Shevchenko. Joanna Jędrzejczyk's name has been thrown out there. I would actually even say like Weili Zhang by the time she's done might be a candidate. But she was a double champion. She dominated the division for 8 years, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And beat the legends, the who's who of the founders of women's MMA in the UFC: Holly Holm, Ronda Rousey, Miesha Tate, Jermaine Durandamine, I guess, would count on that as well. Chris Cyborg, of course. And she's beaten most of the top girls that are still around, honestly. She's got a win over Irene Aldana. Juliana Pena has been a victim of hers in the past. Raquel Pennington is still near the top of the division and has lost to her, as well as Holly Holm. So, there's not much for her to do. There's not much to drive her back. So, happy retirement. And the fight itself was not amazing. Irene Aldana fought, honestly, very, very scared until, I want to say, the fourth round, where she finally started to get going, I guess. But even then, she was outlanded something like 3-1. Nunes just had her way with her. Aldana didn't really didn't ask us a question at any point. She didn't get her own striking game going at any point. She wasn't able to stop takedowns when Nunes really wanted them. And to be clear, Nunes obviously did not want some of the takedowns. She was employing the Corey Sandhagen approach of utilizing takedowns to open up strikes. A lot of the time, she would go for air quotes, go for a single leg and just pull up well short. I think there was one in the third round that particularly even got a little laugh out of me. Definitely not a serious takedown attempt. When she was serious about the takedown, she was able to take her down. She was able to work pretty solid jab game, a lot of low kicks, fair bit of body work. Cardio wasn't an issue because, frankly, she was setting the pace and Aldana wasn't really pressing back much. So, yeah, a comprehensive destruction performance by Nunes. I can't say that I expected overly different, to be honest, because I was not one of the people who thought Aldana really posed a threat. There were a lot of people who did. They were like, Irene Aldana is the cleaner striker. She's the more lethal striker, which was weird to me. She's, the only question for me was, is Nunes going to look like Nunes, or is Nunes going to look like what she did against Juliana Pena and to a degree? Some of the other fights that she even won, where she just doesn't look like she wants to be there. She looked like she wanted to be there. She looked like she had a game plan. She broke down Aldana. And this is terrible for Aldana because had this been the planned Nunes Pena 3 fight, and let's say Nunes wins the same fight, let's say she retires, Aldana would have been in line for a title shot, and now, presumably, she is not. which is probably actually worse for us because it probably means we're going to get like Raquel Pennington versus Holly Holm for the belt in 2023 or 2024. That is not good. That is disturbing for a title picture. Featherweight, I assume, is just going to be dead. The UFC has been downsizing featherweight for some time. They've been forcing anyone who's remotely close to being able to make bantamweight down. Chelsea Chandler comes to mind. Haley Cowan, Eileen Perez. I'm trying to think of any other examples of this, but like anyone that Norma Dumont would be the big one. Jocelyn Edwards, trying to get them all down into the 135 mold. 145 is dead. 135 will continue. I mean, it's been the flagship division. It was the one that broke women's MMA into the sport, into the UFC, I should say, with Ronda Rousey and so on. So that'll be around, but it's a distinctly uninteresting division, to be honest. I was looking at the Tapology rankings for it because I prefer them to the UFC rankings. And there is no one in the top 12 under the age of 31. So there's not even really any up-and-comers. Like Mayra Bueno Silva is the closest thing we got. She's 31. She's kind of your up-and-comer that, might fill the void, might have the athletic upside, the explosiveness, the excitement to be the next Nunes. But that seems like a really, really short time. Because, I mean, again, Nunes ruled this division for like 8 years. If Bueno Silva were to do that next year, let's say at age of 32, she'd have to make it to age 40 to be a top-notch, to be like a comparable fighter, which is very, very unlikely. It's kind of weird, obviously. Like I was saying this to the guys I was watching with. The most interesting fights for Nunes are like in the PFL. Like as bizarrely as it is, that's how far this division has stagnated or fallen, depending on what terminology you want to use. The fact that it would be Nunes versus like Kayla Harrison, Nunes versus Larissa Pacheco. That would be the absolute best fights you could probably find right now in this division. Harrison would not be the division. Harrison cannot make 135. Pacheco probably can't either. But 135, 145, etc. It doesn't really matter. There was very little for her to do. So I do wish her the absolute best in retirement. And I don't have much else to say about the fight. I don't really know where Aldana goes from now. I penciled in Pani Kianzad, win or lose her fight with it's Ketlin Vieira she's fighting, right? Pani Kianzad's fighting Ketlin Vieira. Win or lose, she probably faces Aldana. Aldana's fought most of the top of the division. She's lost to some, she's beaten others, and none of the fights were good enough to really be hankering a rematch. So Kianzad is kind of like the fresh face to put her up against. And that sidelines her from the title picture. There you go. It's not amazing. Anyways, the card otherwise was not super great. It was probably better than I thought. We'll talk about Charles Oliveira beating Dariush in a second, but that was a good fight as expected. Mike Malott put on a good performance against Adam Fugit. Dan Ige, Nate Landwehr was actually probably a little bit worse than I figured it would be, to be honest. But it was a fun fight. Eric Andrews versus Mark Undervario was quite good. Nasruddin Imavov was actually showing off some good stuff against Chris Curtis. I was very impressed. But then the headbutt, of course, ended that one. Jasmine Jasudavicius had a great fight. Iman Zahabi had a cool knockout. But then, we get into Blake Builder, Kyle Nelson wasn't great. David DeRock, Steve Urseg was really, really good. Diana Belbita versus Maria Oliveira wasn't all that amazing. For a UFC pay-per-view, there was a remarkable lack of impact off this card because realistically, yes, we had the main event. Yes, we had Charles Oliveira possibly securing a title shot. And just by virtue of the flyweight depth in the world, Urseg versus Dvorak was an important fight. But that was kind of it. Everything else was just there to be hopefully entertaining, hopefully good fights. And some of them lived up to that. Some of them did not. Co-main event, Charles Oliveira absolutely stormed Beneil Dariush's world. Dariush had some moments, obviously. Both men were, landing some shots from top control. Or not top control, but on the feet. And then Oliveira kind of went for a leg trip. Failed it. Punting pull guard. We ended up with a cool deep half attempt for a leg lock by Oliveira. But Dariush was, on top, doing his thing. They get back to the feet, and then Oliveira hits him with a head kick, hurts him bad, takes him down, pounds him out. Boom, done. Making it really easy. Chucky Olives, apparently one finish away from Crow Cop's record of 21 between the UFC, WEC, and Pride. He wants Islam. It was cringe-inducing to watch him claim that, who's a champion? No, you're not. You're not the champion. You lost to Islam. There's really no word for that. There were a couple people really, really talking about how he shouldn't get the title shot, how it would be the right thing for Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, the winner of that fight, to get the title shot. Don't get me wrong. I would be quite happy, quite fine with that being the case. Honestly. But it was kind of weird that people were trying to make a case that was like some leagues better than giving Charles a rematch. Because, yes, I get it. We saw Charles lose to Islam Makhachev. We saw that with our eyes. No doubt. Dominant performance by Islam. Took the belt. Became the champ. That was his crowning achievement. So far. Although the win over Volkanovski obviously also good. But at the same time, we've seen Charles beat Dustin, Justin, Chandler, etc. by finish, obviously, distinctly. And we've also seen Dustin and Justin lose to Khabib. And Islam Makhachev is not Khabib. I've said this repetitively. But he asks a lot of the same questions. He asks them in different ways. But he asks kind of the same fundamental question of them, and neither of those guys had anything close to an answer for Khabib. So if you are sitting there hyped up for the idea of Islam versus Charles, Islam versus Dustin or Justin, way more than you are for Islam versus Charles too, all the more power to you. I just can't be there with you. I would give Oliveira the title shot. He's a former champion. He is still a guy. He's a guy who has been entertaining and dominant for maybe not dominant because he's a guy that gets clipped a lot, but he's a guy who has gone out there and done the job for a really, really good time, for a long time. Now, admittedly, part of why I wanted Beneil Dariush to win this fight and eventually made that pick for him was that if Beneil Dariush had won, there'd be a no-doubter. It'd be a fresh matchup, fresh person to put in the title picture, coming off a win over Charles Oliveira. That would have been great, but we don't get that. We don't live in that perfect world. And, I don't know. I would give Oliveira the title shot. For Beneil, I've got Arman Tsarukyan. And yes, I am picking Arman Tsarukyan to dust Joaquin Silva so much that I'm not even putting Joaquin Silva into my matchmaking consideration. It's not the winner of Arman Tsarukyan versus Joaquin Silva. It's just Arman Tsarukyan if he wins. Mike Malott looked really, really good against Adam Fugit. But I don't know what that means. The problem with Malott, who picked up the win here with the rear, it was a rear naked choke, I want to say. Can't believe I'm forgetting the method. That's kind of embarrassing, not gonna lie. Anyways, while I look up pull up the card here. Mike Malott's been finishing a lot of guys, obviously. He said, guillotine, pardon me. He said, I'm 4-0 if you count the Dana White Contender Series. I don't, but I get where he's going with it. He's finished everybody. This is, I think, the first time he's been out of the first round during this run. Am I correct on that? Yeah, round one. Yep. This is the first time he's been out of round one since 2015. Granted, that's not a lot of fights to ago because Malott went through a retirement from 2017 to 2020. I don't know what it means is the problem. This is the problem with Malott beating someone on Dana White Contender Series and then moving on to Mickey Gall, who just kind of has a lot of things wrong with him. Johan Lioness, who has a lot of things wrong with him. And then Adam Fugit, who's just not especially good, is that we've seen him against guys who are not non-UFC fighters by any means, but they are at the bottom of the 170 division, if we're being honest. And as a result, we're kind of left with, I'm kind of left with a great deal of questions of like, cool, he's beating quadruple A talent, he's stopping them, but like, what does he really have? Like, he's doing it in fantastic fashion, but like, I look at it, I'm like, there are still a lot of like technical gaps that could be exploited, that could be used. So from a next opponent's standpoint, I'm still keeping it kind of low, but like I've got Eliza Zaleski, a guy who has his flaws, has weaknesses, has shortcomings, but he has things that he is dominantly good at, and we'll see how Malott deals with that. With Fugit, I've got Andre Fiallo as a battle of two guys that I like and I want to see have success, but at the same time have had a really, 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 really rough time. Because I think the Fugit's win over Kunishita is way more about Kunishita than it was about Fugit being good. So yeah, I've got Malott doing that. I've got Fugit doing that. By the way, they were making a big deal about like this being a hometown fight for Malott. And I'll be clear, like the crowd reacted to him really well. He's got the gifted gab. He's got some star power. If he can back it up in the cage, if he can keep backing it up in the cage, this guy's got the ability to talk. He's got the ability to excite. Like, he's an exciting fighter. He's got the personality. He's got the presence. Like, there's everything there. I just don't know really how good of a fighter he is. And I want to see that tested. But like, the interesting thing was someone put up on Twitter the actual map. And I said this in my breakdown, like they were kind of relying on a lot of fighters who actually do not live anywhere near Vancouver being the hometown favorites here. And when you really compare it, Fugit lives over a day by car from Vancouver. It's like an 8-hour flight. Malott. Fugit lives 7 hours by car. He lives the length of the flight to Vancouver away by car. I mean, that being said, the crowd did react to him. The crowd did get patriotic. But I think, to be honest, that's only because the UFC comes to Canada so infrequently now. If they get to the point where they're coming to Canada, I don't know, let's say 3 times a year, 4 times a year. You know, one show in Toronto, one show in Montreal, one show in Vancouver, 3 big cities. And then mix in one in like a Calgary or an Edmonton, Winnipeg, Saskatoon, Regina, Halifax, whatever. You probably will not see that because we're a big country. I think that's usually forgotten. But yeah, they got the hometown reception, but it's just a bit weird that is the case. Anyways, moving on to Dan Ige versus Nate Landwehr. Dan Ige was edging out rounds 1 and 2, knocked down Landwehr late in both of them, kind of just cruised in the third. 2 judges gave the third to Landwehr. I'm not sure I agree with giving him the round. Let's have a look at the UFC stats here real quick. And no, UFC stats are not really how you should score a fight, but it's just, I don't know, it's just interesting to see what they thought. Yeah, they still had Ige landing more shots. And I think he lands the better shots. I don't know. I got no problem with it. Apparently it was 33 to 32 in strike count. So I mean, I'm not gonna complain about it. But there was a lot less urgency to impose his will on the fight in Ige. And at the same time, there was a lot more aggression from Landwehr. So Landwehr deserves credit for that as well. But this fight was not as good as I thought it was going to be, and was essentially the result we knew was going to happen. Ige is actually a really good fighter, and Landwehr is just kind of a big featherweight who has got that dog in him. He's got heart, he's got durability, he's got scrap in him. Whatever term you want to use, he's got it. But he's not a super great athlete or a super clean technician, and those are the guys that give Ige actual trouble. For next opponents, I've got Ige versus Sadiq Youssef, and I've got Landwehr versus the winner of Joe Anderson Brito versus Kushain Ashkabov. Eric Anders versus Marc-Andre Barrio. Man, Barrio got off to a great start here, but like he hit the body kick and the overhand, sent Anders to the mat, did some good work. Just kind of outworked Anders in general, like landing more shots, a little bit cleaner shots. Anders' whole swing and cling thing was actually exciting because Barrio, despite the fact that Barrio did seem like the weaker guy in the clinch, like Anders was the one who was able to, when possible, bully Barrio, and Barrio couldn't do the same back. Barrio, the fact that Barrio just does not stop going in the clinch meant that Anders had to work, and it meant we had fun, and it meant it was a good fight, and it was, entertaining and enjoyable. It was kind of weird. A lot of people were like really taking a lot from Anders' fight with Kyle Daukaus, and I just couldn't, because I think Kyle Daukaus is kind of broken right now. Real talk. The damage he suffered a couple of fights ago is debilitating and possibly career-ending. And Anders was just kind of the guy to take advantage of that. I thought that was my read. And it's the old Anders is still there. When he's forced to be entertaining, he can be. But he would really just like to swing and cling and bully you in the clinch. That's what he wants to do. And Barrio just didn't really accept that as a stationary, stagnant fight. So we had fun, and Barrio won all 3 rounds on the judges' scorecards. I did give the second to Anders. I think that was a swing round. But if you gave it to Barrio, that's not a problem. For next opponents, I've got Joe Pyfer for Barrio. I think that's a perfect fight. I think it's a winnable fight for Pyfer, who is a big prospect for the UFC. And I've got Anders versus Julian Marquez, just as a fun fight. Nasruddin Imavov was beating Chris Curtis. He was doing an impressive job with his footwork, staying away, scoring a takedown occasionally, which was very impressive. You do not see takedowns against Chris Curtis at all. And then in the second round, they clashed heads. Wasn't really anyone's fault. Curtis wasn't able to continue, wasn't able to see. It was a bit of a weird thing because he was begging the ref to go on, but at the same time, he also did say the words that you don't say as a fighter. I can't see. Said it loud enough for the ref to hear it. So I don't know. It was a bit of a weird scene. I would just rebook the fight because this matchup asks, I think, all the right questions of both guys, and it looked like Imavov had the answers. But would he have had them long term? Because Imavov's problem historically has been focus and cardio. And if that fight had gone on longer and longer, does Curtis start to take over with Imavov forgetting what he's supposed to do, not minding his P's and Q's, and getting tired? So it still has interest in it, even though Imavov was clearly winning. Jasmine Jasudavicius was the star-making performance of the card. No, not really star-making, but Miranda Maverick was a big favorite on this card. It was minus 300 to minus 333 when I looked at it. I had Maverick winning, but I did think those odds were too wide. And Jasudavicius showed that. She won all 3 rounds here. She came out. She put it on Maverick. Maverick showed, I think, poor fight IQ. She wasn't listening to her corner. Her corner was, by the way, this was kind of a painful night for corners because there was a bit after, I think, the 3rd round, might have been the 2nd round, of Aldana Nunes where Aldana's corner was asking, what are we going to do? Like the sort of things you don't want to hear from a corner. But at the same time, it was very clear that Aldana wasn't listening to their advice. So I get the frustration. What are we going to do? Are we here to fight or are we not here to fight? And Maverick was kind of the same thing. She kept doing the things that her corner was telling her specifically not to. And it's a shame because Maverick has all the physical talent in the world. Seems like a lovely lady. I would like to cheer for her. I would like to see her do well. But it's been a really, really up and down road. Really up and down. So the question really is, has Jasudavicius turned a corner in a big, reasonable way that she can apply her size, strength, and length to a fight and be an aggressive, forward-moving fighter that she showed at points here, throwing herself into the clinch and getting takedowns? Or is the girl who kind of accidentally beat Kay Hansen still in there? It's kind of weird. It's bizarre, but it was a really good performance by Jasudavicius. All the Canadian fighters won today, last night, so that was good. I've got Jasmine versus the winner of Melissa Gatto, Ariane Lipski. They're chaotic fighters who also have good physical upside and violence. And for Miranda Maverick, it's a step back to a Veronica Hardy or something. It's not too late for her. She's still young enough to find herself, but it has been a work in progress. Ayman Zahabi flatlined Ricci Lang, and that's That's all I got to say about that. Zahabi versus Daniel Willie Cat Santos has a lot of appeal to me. Arichi Lang versus Chad and Helliger. Blake Builder. Oh, Lord. This was a prospect train derailment. He couldn't get Kyle Nelson down. That's not surprising. Nelson's big and strong featherweight. So that in itself is not a problem. But he ran out of ideas. And it was very clear he was running out of ideas because like he would throw like stupid stuff. And he was doing like the whole like he did in the third round he was doing the Sean O'Malley basketball dribble thing. He was doing he was getting excited over like flashy stuff that didn't land. This was really damning. Really, really damning. That the first person he came up against that just didn't let him have his way was able to stop him. And like Kyle Nelson didn't self-destruct. It was a good performance from Nelson. I'm going to say that. But like I kind of am left with a similar feeling to like Jazz Sudovicius where it's like, I don't know that you got better. I just think you got somebody who had the wrong ideas about how this fight was going to go and how hard this fight was going to be. And I really do think that this was more about Builder falling apart and having significant problems as a prospect on the rise. So, next opponents for Blake Builder, I've got him against maybe like Francis Marshall, who's a guy who kind of is stalled as well. And for Kyle Nelson, I've got someone like a Luis Zaldana, who's got a lot of physical ability, and we'll see. Like he's a wild man, and can Kyle Nelson contain that? Can Zaldana take a step forward? Like it's an interesting test of both guys. David Dvorak versus late notice replacement Steve Erceg. By the way, Steve Erceg looked really, really good in this fight. He started really well. He came out and he was landing some lovely counter left hands and doing a lot of and like you know getting the better of like a calf kick exchange with Dvorak. But he started to fade out of the fight towards the end of the first round. The counters weren't landing. Dvorak was coming in cleaner. I do think it was kind of weird that when they went to the corners, Erceg's corners like, this is easy money. I'm like, my guy, you're debuting against top 10 dude in the division in the UFC on short notice. This is not easy money. This is not easy money. But I gave the first round to Dvorak. Second round, Dvorak's doing the same. Again, there isn't a huge variety to what Erceg is doing. The counters are not really landing. A lot of stuff was starting to miss Dvorak. He was parrying stuff. He was doing good work. And he was countering Erceg pretty heavily. This was a bad look. But then Erceg cracks him with a right hand, hits him with a head kick, and goes looking for a guillotine choke. Basically, honestly, kind of like what Mike Malott would do later, and a little bit like how Marc-Andre Barrios started off his fight as well. Just like, you know, getting a big moment. Dvorak got out of the choke, finished the round on top, but I had Erceg stealing around there. And then in the third round, suddenly Erceg's jab is back in play. He's landing some stuff. He's landing some counters. Dvorak did stumble him with the right hand, but Erceg gets into the ground. Dvorak gets back up. Dvorak bull rushes in the clinch. He looks a little bit panicked, looks a little bit tired, lands a couple of nice knees, but can't get the takedown. Erceg's out scrambling him. He's doing his thing. Erceg kind of takes over, stunningly enough. Just out scrambles again, gets on top. Dvorak did hit his sweep. Erceg gets him down again, but Dvorak's right back up. And then Erceg drags him down again. It was kind of interesting. Erceg got to show off his takedowns in that third round. He got to show off his scrambling ability, and his striking appears to have way more to it than I thought it was, although not a ton. So, Erceg called for a fight in like 10, 11 weeks. I say put him up with Tim Elliott. And with Dvorak, I've got with Cody Durden. Dvorak's on a 3-fight skid. We may have to reevaluate where he's going. Cody Durden's a guy I have to reevaluate on the opposite end of the spectrum because he's won a bunch of fights in a row and is actually pretty interesting. And then we get to Deonna Belbita versus Maria Oliveira, which was kind of garbage. For the UFC, like the best thing Oliveira did was starting to spam jumping knees to try to counter the overhand right of Belbita in the third round. And that was her great tactical advancement. Belbita apparently had a broken left foot in this fight and thus really couldn't throw kicks. But she was jumping on his eye. I don't know how much. I don't know what broken means in this category because she was, bouncing up and down after the fight and excited and so on. So, how much is that? I don't know. I still don't think Belbita is very good. I just think Oliveira is actively bad, is what it comes down to. For our next opponents, I've got Belbita versus Shine Velismus, who's another person that I am not entirely sure is good. And Oliveira versus some Dana White Contender Series graduate, because let's be honest, Oliveira has nice baseline testing. She's fairly athletic. She's long. She's big. But when you get past that, there's not really a lot of technique. They were really trying to compare her to Anderson Silva. I'm just like, oh my, why are you doing this to me? Why? Why would you do this? I get that the Spider Girl thing and she does model herself to a degree after Anderson Silva, but it's, oh man, if Anderson Silva doesn't hear that and die a little bit inside, I don't know. Oh boy. I'll say something nice here. Oliveira has a good pull counter game, and she landed some nice takedowns that looked really, really easy. But I think they were really just Belbita not expecting them, and not being a particularly good wrestler in her own right, or particularly physical. This was a bad fight. So yeah, it's a UFC pay-per-view in the books with 3 fights on it that mattered, and on top of that, a pretty cool fight between Barrio and Anders, and Mike Malott had a cool finish. And that was kind of it. Anyone who still says that the UFC pay-per-views hit at the same level as they used to, I would like to have your enjoyment of the card. I would like to have your enjoyment of the product. All right. So, as per usual, check the links down below. Check out the Discord. We're doing Bloody Mania this month, which is a deathmatch series of simulated fights between members of the Discord. And I'm looking forward to a lot of them. Both of our open weight belts are on the line. I myself am going to fight Dougie Two Bags. And we're going to do some things. It's going to be weird for me. I'm taller than Dougie Two Bags. I'm not used to fighting people shorter than me. What is this going to do? Although he does have longer reach. So anyways, there is that. That's going to be really, really fun. Check that out. Check out my social medias. And I will see you to preview the next card.